MPP Sheref Sabawy. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Michael. I really appreciate it. And I'm very happy to hear, like when I first heard about your organization, that was great because I thought that we need to do that. We need to document, we need to look into the contribution of the Egyptian community as one of those mosaic form the Canadian fabric. And that's why I did the Egyptian Heritage Month, because I thought that there could be an opportunity to appreciate, to recognize, to respect what the people who I never met, maybe. Like there's a lot of Egyptians who came here in the 50s and 60s and 70s. I never had the opportunity to meet them. But they still be remembered into their organizations and their government levels, into their universities, into their companies as one of the elite people, but I never had the chance to see them. And maybe nobody will know about them unless we dig and get that. And I attended one time the opening of the Sikh Community Museum in Brampton, and I was very, very, very impressed of the amount of work they did to dig and collect information about the origins of the Sikh communities in Canada, in different areas. And they have even pictures for the Sikh regiment representing the Canadian army in London, or arriving to some of the areas where there was a war going on, representing Canada. And I think one of the very impressive things I seen there was a tomb stone saying John Singh, and he was martyred during the war in 1911. So the 1911, his name, and like Canadian soldier from Indian origin who died in the war in 1911. So that's showing how the community was contributing to Canada since that time. So almost like 100 years in here. I think they have the first MP from Indian origins or Sikh origin was like 1947 or something like that. It's amazing how they dig back into the records and find the history of their community in Canada to show that we were here, we contributed, we are part of that Canada's success. And I think I thought that Egyptian Heritage Month could be a good opportunity to encourage those efforts to highlight and show appreciation to the community who maybe I don't know, but they contribute to the Canadian prosperity.
And there's still much more to record, much more to celebrate. And I'm already excited for the next Egyptian Heritage Month Festival.
Absolutely. I think that was a step I'm so proud of, step in the right direction, being the first elected parliamentarian from Egyptian origins in Canadian history. I thought that's not even my option. It's an obligation, it's a duty to introduce that as a part of, not everything, but part of, or start of our process to make sure that the Egyptians are here, the Egyptians are recognized, and their efforts are recognized as well, and their voices heard as a community as well.
Of course. Visibility is so important.
Visibility and access.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about your life in Egypt and arriving and settling in Canada.
I graduated in 1987 and tried to apply to immigrate to Canada as soon as I graduated in 1987, 1988, and I was rejected. Like I get a declining letter saying that you are not having yet a professional number of years, Then I started my practical life at Egypt, and I got married and got in multiple positions until I was, by the time 1995, I was a regional IT manager Middle East in one of the petroleum companies. At the time, I applied again for Canada, and this time I got accepted. So when I came to Canada, I came as a married couple. I like young married couples. My wife is a physician, and she had some resistance to the immigration to Canada because Canada is not accepting the degrees, and they have to go through the credential process. And even we had to sign a form in the embassy to receive our landing, and then it's affidavit saying that I agree and acknowledge that I will not be working as a doctor. So for her to sign this form was really tough because she knew that she's throwing her career behind her, technically speaking, until further notice. So that was a difficult time.
And what was it like settling in Canada? What kind of services were available when you arrived?
Like before we arrive, before we fly out from Egypt, we had plenty of interviews with people who are coming from Canada or know people coming from Canada. So internet wasn't that at the time available, so you can't tell that much. So you depend on books, libraries, meeting with people, visitors, like people who settled in Canada before. And at the time, I didn't have any Canadian, like Egyptian immigrants in Canada who can give me lots of information. So all our plans was to get to Canada. So actually, at the day we arrived to Canada, I remember when we are in the terminal, me and my wife and luggage, and we standing, we already passed aboard the papers and all the work needed and signatures and everything is good. We stand in the airport and we are saying, okay, we are finally here. Now what? There was no plan after that because all the plan to arrive to Canada, there was nothing planned for what's after we arrived to Canada. So that was like the truth moment, kind of facing yourself. Okay, we are in Canada, now what? We don't even have a place to go. Like we don't have an address to go to. So the only thing happened at this time was which was like tremendously good, is somebody showed up and asking me, "Are you Sheref?" And that was a good surprise because at this moment we were literally asking ourselves, okay, so if we are taking a taxi or something, what's the address we're going to give him? We don't know. We don't have any address. So the closest idea was to find a hotel room until we figure out what we're going to do. So, but somebody showed up because I faxed it to the St. Mary Church in Mississauga because I know Father Angelos from Egypt, from Santa Clahimanot, where this is my church, and he was the father of my church. So I faxed the church. That's it. Faxed me, I'm arriving. So he sent somebody to the airport who arrived after the flight arrival by 2.5 hours. So he took us to Mississauga, and since then we are in Mississauga. We didn't go out. So that's technically speaking what happened. So I think the only at the time available, which was amazing, the newcomers center in St. Mary, in the Canadian Coptic Center, which became the Canadian Coptic Center after that, because when you arrived, it was a small church. St. Mary and St. Athanasius was a very small church. The big church and the centers and everything came after that. So when I arrived in 1995, it was like a small group meet in the weekend and help you, saying you need to how can we review your resume, and this is not the way we write it, because we are in Egypt, we are English style, so it's not called resume, it's called CV. So it have a different format, not the American format. So basically when we arrived, like they helped me to retrofit my CV to become a resume. American stylism, Canadian stylism, Western stylism, whatever. So anyway, and that was the first thing. They helped us to find a good basement apartment so that we can rent. So I ended up working in Tim Horton for night shifts. That's what I was hoping for. Like I was saying, I hope I can find a night shift job so that I can have the mornings to be able to search for professional jobs. So, and that was it. Like I ran into a manager in one of the Tim Hortons, the closest to the area. I was standing there and waiting for the bus, like I was doing Link, to go to Square One, and I missed the bus. So in the weekends, it's like every hour. So we have an hour for the next bus. So we walked in a Tim Horton, ended up to be a Tim Horton. The cashier was like a Lebanese lady, still remember her. So I asked them if they're hiring, and she said, you look like Egyptian. I said, yeah. She said, okay, we'll call the manager. So she called the manager at the time, and he's Lebanese, and he's asking me, when did you arrive? What are you doing? What's your plans? And I said, like, another engineer coming, which means like 3-4 weeks, and they're gonna leave us. I said, no, I will do my best to serve, you know.
What was your motivation to go into politics?
I don't think I planned to be in politics. Like after the first period of time when you settle, and that's applies for all immigrants, not only specific, not me, but everybody. They take some time to settle first, to secure their day-to-day life, they secure their jobs, stability. So I wasn't involved in politics in Egypt at all. I never even met a member of parliament before I leave Egypt, not even once. So I wouldn't say that I was like a politician by born or whatever. So when I get involved here, it was just trying to get involved, voice opinion, involved into the process, understand how to help or how to get into the mechanics of the community. It's a discovery process. And slowly I got more involved, get involved with the party, get involved with campaigns, with election stuff. And at some point of time, I felt that I can be more involved in that.
And in your opinion, how and in what ways can Egyptians participate in local and national politics in Canada?
First of all, you have to follow, like read the news. Like sometimes you talk to a lot of immigrants. I'm not talking specifically Egyptians, but generally, Egyptians are not really political animals. Like when you talk to Egyptians, because of the persecution and being a minority in Egypt, involving in politics could be meaning troubles. Involving in politics when you are not, like when you are minority and get involved in politics, that's double troubles. So they can stay or try to stay out of politics or away of politics as much as they can. And even here, when I start my political activities and I ask people to do a membership in the party, say, no. We can listen, we maybe can go and vote, but we never be part of any party. We can't join any parties. They feel that joining the party could be viewed as something hostile to the government. We need to read first, we need to understand. So which is true. Like this is, I think, the first step. You have to read, understand, following the news, understand the differences, understand what this party is asking for. Is that exactly what you want, or you maybe want something else? So just listening, communicating, getting involved, attend the meeting, read emails. All the parties send emails. So when you feel that you kind of tend to find the party who's kind of telling what you have in mind, then suits your needs. And then you can get involved by helping them. Like when I was running the first time, and I was trying to talk to the youth, because our youth was our hope. Honestly, before even I think I thought about running, the plan was, or the thinking was, we need to get the youth, train them, and prepare them to run. Because we at the time felt that it's very above our head. Like this is too much focus, too much skill set is not there, maybe the language barriers and everything else. Like being a first generation or just a new immigrant is different than being second generation who was born here, grow in the system, understood everything, and they get trained here. Education is here, no accents or very very minimal accent. So they are more geared for politics. So when I first did my first one of the interviews, and I was saying to one of the guys, like, I would like you to join the party and like have activity and vote and stuff. And a young guy standed and said, "I'm conservative." I said, "Very good. Can I ask you 3 questions?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Number one, do you know who's your member of parliament?" And he's told, he said, "No." He said, "The second question, did you gone during the campaign, during the election, and help with the candidate you think you belong to, the party, his party, or the party, conservative party, for example?" And he said, "No." I said, "My last question, do you have a valid member? Do you renew your membership in the conservative party?" He said, "No, but that do." So I said, "You can't be conservative by born. Like, being in the party, being active means you are a member, you are following what's going on, you go to their meetings, you go to their town hall meetings, you meet their politicians, understand what you're asking for, voice your needs, like talk about our community need XYZ. Then you are voicing your community needs through the channel which can take that requirements up, and then it can be considered if it's reasonable. Okay, so this is how to get involved. You have to listen, you have to get involved, you have to invest some time, maybe also some donations, because Canadians say a very good say, I like it, put your money where your mouth is. Our community generally like to talk about all aspects of politics here and there, like here in Canada and back home in Egypt. But when it comes to getting involved, meaning you need your action, we need your money, we need your donation, they stand and say, "No, I'll pass."
And on that note, what are the benefits to the Egyptian and other communities for engaging in local and national politics?
Number one, every community have their own characteristics and own issues. Like, the issues are the same, but the priorities of issues could be different. Like, some community might be viewing some specific issue as very, very high top priority, when another community see it, it's important, but it's not as important as another. So the importance of being involved or being part of the process is we need to voice our concern, we need to voice our needs, our community needs. Part of the planning process of the government generally is what is the demands of the people. Like, nobody will come and meet a person and say, like, what do you need? Usually it's a vice versa. When the people need something, they go to the government or go to the member of parliament or MPP, member of provincial parliament, and say, we have a problem with this. Our business have a problem with this. All doctors have a problem with this. All patients have a problem with this. So if I didn't hear any complaints from anybody, I assume that everything is good. We only listen, we only hear when there is an issue. If there is no issue, if there's nobody, I assume that there's no issue. That's equivalent to no issues.
And why did you choose to join the Conservative Party?
Very good question. I think provincially, the Conservative Party came with a very good platform in regarding to using the resource of the province in a very reasonable, responsible financially to drive the economy, to put back Ontario to as the vehicle to the Canadian prosperity, the main financial center of Canada, and it have been there all the time. It just like in some periods of time we lost this. The whole Canadian feel that Canada lost its leader as a G7 country in the whole world because of many reasons. Some of those reasons is the economical choices. So conservatives come as a party who's looking into drive the financial aspect, drive the corporates, drive the small business, which is the backbone of the economy, the Canadian Ontario economy and the Canadian economy. One of the very important differences which I can talk about is conservatives looks into the government as a factor to create the good environment for the business to grow, not drive the business by giving money or drive the business by cutting taxes or driving business by encouraging unions or any of that. Like we create an environment where the business can prosper. The private business need to take their lead. The government doesn't do manufacture, doesn't do agriculture. They encourage the environment, create this good environment for the private business to invest and work and hire people and grow.
And do you feel like the majority of the Egyptian community in Canada, based on your experience, vote conservative or liberal?
I think mixed. Like I can't say that all of them are conservative, and it's not even right to assume that. There's nothing take for granted in like there's no entitlement. You can't say that all the Egyptians are conservative or all the Chinese are liberals or all the Indians are NDP. Like I don't think you can slice it this way. But I have to say that at some point of time, the liberals were positioning themselves as the party who encourage immigrants and newly immigrated people. That's why they still kind of having a good grasp of votes in the immigrants circles. But that was at some point of time where the liberals were talking about multi-diversity and multiculturalism, and conservatives talking about keeping Canada for Canadians. So there was some ideological difference in the look. But I think there's a big change now. We understand that now both conservative and liberals are multicultural, multi-diverse, their representation from vast majority groups of backgrounds. Like we have members, provincial members of parliament who are from Korean community, from Armenian community, from Indian community, from Hindu community, Sikh community, Punjabi community, Egyptian community. So it's a representation of lots of different communities, and this add very high awareness of those specific issues of each community into the parliament and into the discussions of the government.
And jumping off of the topic of politics, what does it mean to you to be Egyptian Canadian?
That's actually a very smart question and very important question. Lots of people, when we start talking about issues concerns specific community, like Indian community, Pakistani community, Egyptian community, they got pissed off and saying, I'm not Egyptian, I'm not Pakistani, I'm not Indian, I'm Canadian. I don't see any conflict between being Canadian and from Egyptian origins. Like, I don't see that conflict. I don't see that's a conflict of interest. I'm representing all the people in Erin Mills. And I'm representing all the Egyptians in a way in the parliament. Because just happened, like I'm not saying that I earn it by voting in my riding, but if I am the only one Egyptian in the parliament, definitely if there's a question about the Egyptian community, I'm not asking for it. It will come to me by itself. Just the nature of things. So I don't have any problem saying I'm Egyptian origin or I chose Canada. I mean, when I say I chose Canada, some Egyptians get angry. So you give up your country. No, I didn't give up my country. I had some issues which I didn't like. I chose to change, and I did. So I'm still very good connection with Egypt, even the Egyptian government, the ministries, the different ministries, and member of parliament in the Egyptian parliament. I'm still in very good terms with them. The ambassador, the counselor. I don't think there's any conflict of that, and I see other communities who I think they superseded us into this activities, like the Indian community, for example. They have a very good relation and cooperation between the Indian government and the member of parliaments from Indian community origins. And we can see that when the problem happened through the COVID, they had shortage in oxygen. The provincial MPPs sourced out, I think, 1,000 tank of oxygen, and they helped to fly that to India to help the Indian government. When Lebanon Beirut explosion happened, I called Doug Ford and I said, can we help the Lebanese authorities, Lebanese community? Canadian Lebanese were demanding that. And he said yes, and he approved $2 million in aid, medical aid and special needs aid to help in the Beirut issue. So I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as an assets. Egyptians here can be good assets for their countries, or any immigrants. He can be very good asset for Canada, and as a bridge with their home countries.
And on the topic of connections to the homeland, what does Egypt mean to you today?
My home country. I still consider Egypt is where I grown, where I have memories, and I still feel very connected with my origins. I always talk to my kids about Egypt, and I plan visiting, and I hope that they inherit that. And my kids are speaking Arabic fluently. They watch the Egyptian movies, the comic movies. I'm very happy and I'm very proud of that, because when they communicate with their grandparents or their uncles or their aunts, they are feeling that there is communication. They are Egyptians. You will know that they are Egyptians when you talk to them 5 minutes. You can't even recognize that they have been born and grown up in Canada. They will crack jokes and like Egyptian jokes and everything. So I'm very happy about that. I mean, personally, I think that's a good achievement for our second generation to be Egyptians like us. I'm biased.
And speaking of the next generation,
Yes.
what advice would you give to youth and young professionals who are interested in entering politics and pursuing a similar career path?
It's a good question. I like to talk about that, but I need to maybe propose another question before that. Why our second generation is not involved in politics? When we see other communities are very eager, like if you took in other communities, you ask for one volunteer, you get 500 to pick from.
Oh.
You call for an event and everybody's coming even without invitation. They would love to be there, they would like to get involved. Why? Very simple. Multiple things, of course, but I think I'll talk about 2 or 3 main factors in that. Our main generation, like us, first generation, don't like politics, which I can understand. Very good reasoning for that. I understand the reasons and everything. But they kind of passed that to their second generation. So when you talk to some of the youth people and they say, oh, my dad say all politicians are crooks. They inherited that. Well, I have to say that this is not helping That's not good for our community. First of all, nobody here in politics is a crook because the transparency, the media, like they will dig in everybody's history to the third generation if they could find a scandal. So they can be crooks. So this is a bad idea coming again, package from different countries that it's corruption, it's that, it's this. I don't think any politician here is corrupt. Number two, lot of the immigrants here, Egyptians specifically, they want their kids to be a doctor, a pharmacist, or an engineer, so they don't want to pollute their minds with politics. So when you start talking to some of the kids and they are interested, especially in high school, they're interested to join, their parents ask not to take them because they don't want them to get out of focus of being a doctor or a pharmacist or an engineer, which again, like I understand that for the old generation because we are back home with some specific specializations in a higher grade than the rest, like doctor and engineer and a pharmacist or a dentist is in a specific ranking and everybody else in a different ranking, which again, like it's a wrong thing, but we grown up this way. So I understand the old generation way of thinking, but the new generation should not be that. Like there's change, we changed a lot of things, we learned a lot of things when we came to be immigrants to Canada, and part of that is we have to start looking into things differently. There's very successful people doing different things than being a doctor or a pharmacist or an engineer. How they got involved? That's very simple. Like we do training here, we do politics 101, we do roadmap to running in politics. That's internal courses which developed based on courses from political science courses and the Barty's courses. So the Barty have their own politics 101, which courses I did attend in 2002, for example, the politics 101 or opening doors for politics. Those two courses I attended in 2002, 2001, 2020 years ago. It's a one-day course, a workshop, or 2 days course, if I can remember properly. But it gives you an overview about the system. It's important for our new generation to understand because end of the day, we are not alone here. There's many mosaic of communities in Canada, the Canadian fabric, the mosaic, and we have to keep focusing that our next generation can be still that representation in the fabric, if that make it clear.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much, MPP Sheref, for sitting with me, and best of luck with all of your endeavors.